Well, joining us now is Canada's ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman. Ambassador, thank you for taking the time.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So, listen, I want to begin with, of course, the upcoming U.S. election, because you were just in Montreal talking to the government and to cabinet about the situation in the United States. The Prime Minister announced essentially the relaunch of this Team Canada approach. How much of a concern is Donald Trump for Canada?
Well, you know, I think that the thing to remember is that our country and the U.S. we're so deeply integrated, even more now than we were even 5-6 years ago because of COVID and supply chain disruptions. So we've kind of doubled down on our relationship with each other. And that relationship persists because of the millions of relationships that Americans and Canadians have together all the time. That generally means that what we're doing together is productive and smooth and gives us both a source of strength for each other. But sometimes it means that there are tensions because we have different goals nationally. So I think the most important thing to remember is regardless of who's in the White House, we're largely in sync, but often we'll have areas that we need to work on. And that's a lot about what the Canada Task Force that the Prime Minister announced is designed to address, to make sure we have those relationships strong, those lines of communication strong, so that we can address tensions when they come up.
Mm-hmm. But would a second Biden administration be easier for this country?
You know, we have had a really good relationship with the Biden administration. We've done really important things together. But don't forget, we had some pretty important achievements with the Trump administration, too. We renegotiated the NAFTA. It was modernized. It was brought up to date. It was an agreement that did need modernization. And it's a great success story. Trade between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico is higher than it's ever been. And so that's an important achievement that we had with that administration. And I'm confident that, you know, should former President Trump be reelected, we will have other successes with them.
Mm-hmm. You talk about this Team Canada approach, this initiative, but how different is it really than what you're meant to be doing anyway? You know, we heard the Prime Minister talk about Canadians talking to Americans, reminding them the importance of Canada, the importance of Canadian trade. But isn't that what goes on day to day? How different really is this approach from what is the status quo between Canada and the United States?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. And it's something that we talked about as we were moving forward to launch this. And this is the difference. Yes, our embassy in Washington, our team across the United States is busy building and reinforcing relationships and, you know, promoting Canadian interests all the time across the country. But what's different this time and now over the course of this year is that we're going to be very intentional and systematic about it. So my team across the U.S. since the summer has been mapping kind of our presence and our relationships and our lines of communication in every single state and looking at where we feel, okay, we really do have a good voice into the elected officials, into the influencers, into the business community, into the academic community, but some places we might have some gaps. And so this is, the task force is the Canadian sort of corollary of the work that we're doing in the United States, to go across the country, to understand from Canadians, from all levels of government, from all business sectors, from all communities, from unions, from civil society groups, what's going well in the U.S. for you? And can we go down there? Can you help us reinforce that in a systematic, intentional way? So that's what it is. It's more of the same. It's like leaning in to, as you say, what we do all the time, but, you know, putting it in high gear.
And does that work start now? Again, the election is still months away, but is that particular lean-in starting to take place already?
Yes, it is. Like, as I say, in the U.S., we've been at it since the summer, and this including with Canadian interlocutors, you know, making sure as they're in the United States that they're strengthening all of the relationships that they have. But this is, as I say, turning it up even more.
Okay, but as you say that, though, you know, Donald Trump, as you and I speak, he's not yet secured the Republican nomination. But already he's talking about imposing this 10% tariff on any goods sold in the United States not made in the United States. Mm-hmm. When now private citizen, former President Donald Trump says something like that, who stands up for Canada in the U.S.? Are we hearing voices pushing back on that already, or is that a debate that Canadians need to pick up to make sure that Canadian companies and products are not harmed?
All of the above, right? We need Canadians who are deeply integrated with their American partners, business partners, investment partners, supply chain partners, to activate those American partnerships and to say, hey, look at this relationship that you have with us, Canada, that is a source of strength for you, that is a source of prosperity for you, that is a source of jobs for you. This needs to be maintained. And so when there are policies that could potentially come out of a future White House that are going to inhibit that, that are going to diminish that, yes, Canada will raise its voice, but it's really important that our American partners raise their voice because they're the ones who vote.
Are we hearing?
We are. We are doing that already, and we will do it more. But I would like to say on the 10% tariff, you know, Canada will go into that conversation should former President Trump re-enter the White House and say, well, we have the NAFTA, or the CUSMA, which is the renegotiated NAFTA. And under that agreement, Canada-U.S. trade is 99% tariff-free. And we just negotiated that with his previous administration. So I think our position is that 10% tariff policy wouldn't apply to Canada, wouldn't apply to Mexico, because we have just secured this incredibly, as I said, modernized deal that is having really important economic impacts for all three countries.
Which has to be reviewed, though, in a couple of years' time.
That's right.
So is that just deferring, perhaps, a tariff or any type of punitive policy that might come from a U.S. administration?
In these conversations with the Americans, not only the White House, but everybody who has an interest in a strong and prosperous Canada, U.S., Mexico economic partnership, you have to talk about the facts, right? You have to talk about the benefits of the regime that we have just recreated. As I say, the facts speak for themselves. Our trade with the Americans and the Mexicans and their trade with us in Mexico, all-time historical high, all-time historical prosperity being brought through that arrangement to our three countries. So you start there. And then you say, well, if that's the case, if it's working, let's double down on what's working. Let's not go backwards.
Mm-hmm. Quickly running out of time, but I do want to ask you, because, you know, Canadians are so much focused on trade when we talk about the United States. But Americans, it seems, as of late, are much more focused on defense, continental defense, our relationship with NATO. And of course, Donald Trump, when he was the last time U.S. president, criticized Canada for its contribution to NATO. Since then, we've seen the government promise billions of dollars of investment, in particular for NORAD, as well as the F-35s. Is the criticism of Canada not stepping up enough still being heard in Washington? What more do they want, or are the Americans satisfied at this point?
Well, I think it's fair to say that given the amount of focus that the U.S. Has to put on international activities worldwide, you know, there's a lot of conflict in the world, and given the fact that Homeland Security and domestic defense is always top of mind for all Americans, regardless of political affiliation, defense is a very important conversation to have with them. And maintaining their confidence in us as a secure, sound defense partner is essential. The investments that you talk about, modernization of NORAD, over-the-horizon radar, really cutting-edge technology that we are leaning into and participating in and investing in, the fighter jets. These are really important purchases and really important contributions they made, and it has been noticed in Washington. So I think that, to answer your question straight on, there is a deep appreciation for these recent announcements and these acquisitions. Would the U.S. like us to do more? Probably wants everyone to do more, right? Always. But are they very happy with the direction in which we're heading? Yes.
Ambassador Kirsten Hillman, really appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.